I'd like to begin this video with a story, and the story is about a man from New Zealand who had a motorcycle, a Harley Davidson. Originally it was an Indian, but he over the years had modified it and modified it and modified it to the point where it became what's now known as the fastest Indian. And the movie was released a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and it starred Anthony Hopkins, and it was about his journey from where he was in New Zealand in this little shack where, he lived in. It was like a little cabin, very basic, very Spartan. And he didn't worry about doing the lawns, if it got too big and neighbors started to complain, he just would burn the grass because he couldn't even be bothered cutting the lawn because it was a distraction. And as you look in the film, you see all these old piston heads on the wall, that have been sacrificed to the god of speed. These are pistons that he'd made specifically for the motorcycle, because over the years, as you increase the speed, you increase the stresses, and the tolerances need to change, and things start to break, so you've got to replace them. And what you find is that as you modify things over and over again, that there comes a point where the standard parts that are manufactured for everyone else don't fit anymore, or they don't do the job the way you want them to. So you have to learn how to be a metallurgist, or a scientist, or an alchemist, or an architect, or an engineer, and you have to start building your own stuff. Now, he goes through all these ups and downs and trials and tribulations because his goal is to get to the salt flat where they hold all the what's the word I'm looking for? The unlimited land speed records. Now, I'm not an expert in this field, but from what I understood from the story is that you can pretty much build any kind of vehicle you want, as long as it resembles a motorcycle or a car of some sort, and you can take it on a run, and you can open that baby up all the way and see just how fast it can go. And so that was his goal, to get from New Zealand, which is in what we say in Australia, in the middle of bumfuck, all the way around to the other side of the planet, to the United States, where they hold this, mega race where it's all about time trialing and doing, the quarter mile and much, much more distances as fast as you can. So he ends up getting there, obviously, in the end. But you can't just run, you can't just take your vehicle out there and race. There's safety protocols you have to adhere to. And so what he does is he's there getting his vehicle scrutinized, and during the scrutineering they decline his application. They say you can't race, it's unsafe, like these tires aren't regulation, these welds here, they look like they've been done by hand and not by machine, and what's this fuel system? And the guy reaches in and he pulls off the fuel cap, and it's the lid of a brandy bottle. And they look at each other like, is this guy for real? Is this a brandy bottle cap? Is that your fuel? Is that your fuel cap? That's, what happens if this thing crashes and fuel goes everywhere and it explodes? And, it's unsafe. And they turn to him and look for his response, and he says, that brandy bottle cap is the only thing that fits into that fuel line. And when you're getting up to high speeds, weight is everything. That fuel system is a custom fuel system that I built myself. And they're just like, how do you deal with this guy? Like, he just doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand. What are we going to do with him? We can't let him race. He's going to kill himself. Unbeknownst to them, is that this guy has been refining and re-engineering this machine. Not just modifications here and there, but every single piece of this bike is a custom build. Although it began as a Harley Davidson Indian, it's now become a totally customized concept vehicle, an experimental vehicle that he has labored extensively to be able to get up to the point where it can withstand the huge stresses that it will have to undergo to obtain that high speed. And so I won't go into all the details of the story, because you may want to see the movie The Fastest Indian with Anthony Hopkins in it. I highly recommend it. One of my favorite films. But this isn't really a spoiler, because it's well known in the racing industry, is that not only did he finally get to run, but he absolutely obliterated all records previously. And not only, it's funny because he was laughed at in the beginning. People laughed at him. Not only did he end up racing and obliterating the records, but he went back every year for the next 9 years and beat his own record over and over and over again. And as far as we know, still to this day, those records are sustained. And I'm sure one day in the future, or if they haven't recently, with all the new modern technology, they'll be surpassed. But not only was he key in inspiring a whole new movement of thinking in terms of racing, but once he did this, so many manufacturers and engineers and racing teams ended up wanting to know how he did it and what they could do to improve their products. And whether we know it or not, a lot of the key features that we have today, just in our normal car or motorcycles that we get into and ride every day, he's had a massive impact on. His footprint, his energetic signature is in a lot of the vehicles that we just take for granted today. A lot of the safety measures, a lot of the technology and high speed tires, for example. One of the scenes in there is that he would make his own tires, right? So they didn't have tires back when he was racing that were able to withstand speeds of up to 300 miles per hour. He had to make those out of existing tires. So he would he made friends with the kid next door made friends with him, obviously, because it's just such an interesting thing he was doing. Only a child could understand that, because all the adults thought he was crazy. But he would often convince the boy next door to go and get his mum's carving knife and bring it over so he could borrow it, so he could shave down the edges of the tyres by hand. Now, if you think about how impressive that is and how much time we're talking about, like it's on par for me, in my mind at least, with the Japanese samurai sword maker. The level of artistry that went into this machine is unprecedented. You think about how perfect that tyre would have to be able to go at 300 miles per hour. Like, you think about it, any little edge, any discrepancy in that tyre would cause wobble, and it'd just start wobbling uncontrollably at high speed to the point where it could crash the bike. So you imagine how much time and how finely tuned his mind and his hand would have to be to shave that tyre perfectly so it could do that speed. Of course, now, tyre manufacturers like Pirelli and Bridgestone and Michelin, they all make, you can buy tyres if you have enough money that will do those speeds, high performance tyres. But that category it didn't exist then. His actions has forced the entire world to respond. To me, a person like that has hero status, superhero status in my mind. They're pushing the envelope so far. They're setting precedences that were never even possible in people's minds. They're doing it, and they're causing people to have to respond. So today, what I'd like to do is repeat the experiment and see what kind of results we're going to get on the scanner. Now, I know for a fact that I myself, in the room obviously, have been able to achieve amplitudes around just under half of what we achieved yesterday by myself. So I want to go in under the brain scanner again and see what we can do. This is unassisted, by the way. This is just me. And I want to see what kind of amplitudes I can do, what kind of states I can get into, and how they differ from the experiment where I invited the group to participate in. So, let's see. It's not about supernatural anymore. It's like, how supernatural can I be today? Let's see.